And now, introducing the self-proclaimed king of LL Bean. His credo, you'll never find a better jean than with Glenn and LL Bean. It's the pleats in the pants, they're very flattering. Don't act like you're not impressed. He is Glenn Clark.
Good morning, it is Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn Clark, he's Paul Valley. Got a lot to do on a Tuesday edition of the program. Coming up in just a little bit, Brenda Frese is going to join us. Maryland's headed back to the NCAA Tournament, hosting for the first time since 2019 because of the pandemic. So we will talk to them before they get ready to play Delaware on Friday to open up their NCAA Tournament journey. Patrick Stevens will check in. We will talk about the brackets. We'll talk about what this committee got right, what the committee got wrong, what's particularly enticing, all of those things. Also talk a little lacrosse, big wins for both Hopkins and Loyola over the weekend. Maryland continues to roll, and they get a huge showdown with Virginia coming up on Saturday, so we'll talk about all of that. And later on in the program, we are going to catch up with Jonas Shaffer, Baltimore Sun Ravens beat writer. Obviously, the Ravens still haven't done anything as of yet. Let's get into that here in 1 second. Today's show brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. We are coming back Friday afternoon. I'll be there with Rodney Elliott, former Terps star, former Dunbar standout. We'll be hanging out in the FanDuel Sportsbook for the early games on Friday in the NCAA Tournament. We want you to come join us from 12 to 4. I mean, really, you're going to want to be there all day. And the cool thing this week about the FanDuel Sportsbook is they are opening special hours, 9 a.m. every day, Thursday through Sunday. And throughout the NCAA Tournament, you bet $50 on any NCAA tournament game, and even if you lose, hold on to your ticket because you're going to be able to throw it in the hopper, and somebody is going to win a $500 bracket bonus just for betting in the FanDuel Sportsbook on an NCAA tournament game. Again, a $50 bet is what you got to do. So, encourage you to get over to the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. They also have now 63 24/7 self-service kiosks. They couldn't be easier to use. My man Rodney Elliott had never used one of them before Sunday, and I don't want to say that Rodney's getting older, but, you know, he's getting there. And he was like, man, this is easy. I'm like, yeah, exactly right. They couldn't be easier. So get over and check it out. All right, now, first day of legal tampering before the NFL New Year begins on Wednesday, and, of course, that doesn't mean anything any longer because we now just know the guys are signing deals, and we can go ahead and report them, and that's the way that it is. The Ravens still have not done anything. It's also notable that yet Bradley Bozeman has not signed anywhere, and he's about the only veteran center that hasn't signed anywhere, so maybe that's good news for the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe. It's hard to get a feel for it. Patrick Ricard has also not agreed to a deal as of yet anywhere else. Could it be that means the market moves back? Maybe. Could it be that because other players are off the board, specifically at center, everybody agreed to deals very quickly? So it's basically Bradley that's left. So if you were a team that went into free agency wanting a center, perhaps you're now willing to throw a bit more money towards Bradley Bozeman because he's what's available at this point. It'd be nice for it to end up being good news for the Baltimore Ravens. I'd still bet against it at the moment, but sure, it's weird that the Brian Allens of the world and the Ben Joneses of the world and guys like that have deals done before Bradley Bozeman has his deal done. This cannot be surprising. There is just no world in which if you, and I wrote this in my column at PressBoxOnline.com, the first thing we all say is, do the Ravens know the free agency has started? It's the first tweet we send out every year. It's broken record, man. It's all we ever do. And as I've said before, this doesn't make their strategy the right one to be more patient, to not press when free agency opens. It doesn't mean it's the correct strategy. Plenty of teams that have signed players on the first day of free agency have done quite well and have won significant things. And it's not as if the Ravens have never done something like that. It's just very rare that they were to sign a player on the first day of free agency, or at this point the tampering period, if you will. The Ravens typically are far more inclined to wait the market out. And instead of being the team that bowls someone over with an offer, you know, what You're not going to do better than this. They're typically the team that is more willing to wait and see if the market will come back to them for certain players. Sometimes it's worked out great. Other times it's not worked out at all. Other times they've attempted to give insane contracts to Ryan Grant, and we all just kind of like to pretend that that was never a thing. There is no correct answer. This is not me defending the Ravens and saying, well, they've proven this is the best way to do business. They haven't proven that. They've proven it's a way to do business. And at times it's worked. I am not a blind trust in anyone type of person. There is no world in which you just get to say, well, this is the Ravens. They always get things right. No, they don't. They don't always get things right. I don't know what the percentage is off the top of my head of times they've gotten things right. Do they get things right maybe more than some other? Would I rather be the Ravens than the Jacksonville Jaguars who are giving insane money to Christian Kirk? Yeah, I'd rather be that. It's another thing we like to do, by the way, is look at everybody else that signs and say, I wouldn't give that guy that type of money. Well, good, then you wouldn't get him. That's the way that it works. We can all do this forever. It's like the people that want to say, you really think Lamar Jackson's worth $50 million? Yeah, because that's the rate for quarterbacks. I do. It's not hard. I want the guy on my team. So, yes, he's worth that amount of money. This bit where we all want to sit around and pretend like you can get a player at another dollar amount. Once upon a time, the Ravens didn't want to give $6 million to Anquan Bolden. How'd that work out for him? I want to have the player on my team. Again, I get it. Christian Kirk is an extreme. I probably wouldn't give that much money to Christian Kirk. But this is what it costs. It's why it was so insane that we were haggling over the idea of giving Hollywood Brown the fifth-year option. And I tried to say, what are we doing? Like, this is nuts. Christian Kirk has got $18 million. DJ Chark is getting $12 million. The idea that the fifth-year option at $13 or $14 million is somehow a bad number for Hollywood Brown is bonkers. And again, whether or not you're going to be signing him long-term is a different conversation, but the fifth-year option specifically was never a price that didn't make sense for Hollywood Brown, and we just were bored, so we wanted something to talk about. The money's what's out there. You're a good football player, you can get money. The Ravens haven't given it to anybody yet. Michael Pierce is now going to be available again. There's been a lot of talk that if you're moving on from Brandon Williams, if you don't know if Calais Campbell's back, well, Michael Pierce was a pretty good football player while he was here. Signed big money in Minnesota, then obviously the pandemic was an issue for him because I believe it's asthma or what. I'm trying to remember what his condition was. So he wasn't able to play the pandemic year. Just never really worked for him in Minnesota. But Michael Pierce was a hell of a football player when he was in Baltimore. So if you can get him at a reduced price, bring him back, maybe that's a good idea for the Baltimore Ravens and a team that we believe needs to do some work along their defensive line. That sounds like it might work for me. Will they do it? Couldn't tell you. They're not going to tell me. Zadarius Smith officially available. Everyone says the Ravens are kicking the tires on Zadarius Smith. Makes sense. Don't know what the market is for Zadarius. As I said yesterday, I don't know how it impacts him that he's dealing with a back injury. It's a legit thing, man. Back injuries are, and we can say, hey, he came back and play. I understand that, but we still talk about the word back injury. It's going to make some people uncomfortable.
I hurt my back 3 weeks ago. It's still nagging.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't sign you. Just no offense. If I were the Ravens, I would pass. Yeah. I would pass. There's no dollar amount.
I got the shirt on.
Yeah, I understand. It's a nice looking shirt. I'm just telling you, I still wouldn't sign you if I were them. There's a lot of things. I don't know if it would be worse than the Alejandro Villanueva signing, but
I don't think it could be worse.
I think it would be good. I know that much. I probably wouldn't go that route. We'll see. And I get it. I have said before, I understand the feeling. I understand we just woke up on Christmas morning and there's no new toys underneath our tree and everybody else has new toys. And we're jealous. I completely get that concept. There is something going on and we're not participating. What's the point of being an NFL fan and having a team if you don't get to participate in all the things the NFL teams do? I get the feeling. We can't be surprised. You can be whatever you want. You can think that they're making a mistake. You can support. You can be anything you want to be. have any opinion about the subject, you can say, if I were the Ravens, I would have gone all in for Hassan Reddick. And I would have paid the amount of money the Philadelphia Eagles paid to land Hassan Reddick. I think that's a fine take to have, if it's your take. I'm split on it because it is an awful lot of money. But I like Hassan Reddick as a football player. Chandler Jones is still available. I'd certainly be interested in Chandler Jones. Tyrann Mathieu, of course, is still available. I'd certainly be interested in Tyrann Mathieu. Have whatever take you want to have. But you cannot be surprised. You're doing that. Like, you had to be prepared for this to be the way that we would start. And by the way, they can still sign somebody today. Free agency doesn't even open until tomorrow. They can still sign somebody today. But you can't be surprised by the first day going by without the Ravens really being involved. Because how long have you been a fan? You have to be used to it by now. And the thing that I always say, like the bit we will eventually reconcile with, hey, it was always going to be the second wave of free agency and the draft that was going to matter most for the Ravens. We always reconcile at the end of it with that. And it's as true as it is terrifying. They do value the second wave of free agency. They do prioritize the draft. To what extent? They found a couple of players that we all think are good last year in Dafe Owe and Rashad Bateman in the first round. But was that enough? Were either of those guys enough to be a difference maker to get them into the postseason? Dafe Owe made, arguably the second most important play of the year. If you want to say Tucker's kick was the most, he made the second most. But I would probably argue it was the most because they hadn't beaten the Chiefs. But that was one play. Did he have an exceptional season? Was he individually the difference maker? No. He made the most important play. But he wasn't that guy. Does that mean he won't be a star for years to come? He might very well be. The draft is important, but the Ravens need players next year. They need guys that can make a difference. They've got a good roster, but a championship caliber roster? Probably not. Probably a few too many holes. They need players that can impact now. Justin Houston wasn't really that guy. Alejandro Villanueva certainly wasn't that guy. The second phase of free agency, it is far more difficult to find that guy. Drastically more difficult. To be fair, they signed somebody in the first phase of free agency a year ago in Kevin Zeitler, who could not have worked out better. Who, in the immediacy, is one of the all-time great pickups in Ravens history. Was dominant a year ago. And hopefully they find somebody like that in the course of the next week. So there's that. You know what? Yeah, thank you, Chris. I'm going to pause. We're not going to talk about anything else for a minute. Because what we're going to talk about is we need to fill this bracket contest. That's what we're going to talk about. We're more than halfway there. That's a good thing. We only have 2 more days, though, before the games begin. So I need you right now to get out your phone, pull out your Venmers, pull out your PayPalers, pull out your Cash Appers, and you need to send me $20 to get in on our charity bracket contest that we do every year. Paul, would Miles Jack be a cheaper alternative to Bobby Wagner? Sure. I mean, Miles Jack's a guy for the most part. Like he's still a freak athlete. He's just never really been a dominant football player. Pull out those apps. If you're on Cash App, $sign Glenn Clark Radio. If you're on PayPal, Glenn Clark 180. If you are on Venmo, Glenn-Clark, 2 N's as always, and Glenn and no E in Clark. You should probably know that by now if you're here.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, bad news. I don't know who you sent money to, but you should probably look into it. Pull it out, send over $20. Then find me on Twitter, @GlennClarkRadio, or email me, glennclarkradio@gmail.com. Any form of communication, Facebook works. Send me a carrier pigeon, whatever it is that you can do. I wouldn't use the United States Postal Service at this point because I can't guarantee I'll find out about it before the games begin. And let me know, hey, I got my money in. Send me that link. And you know what I'll do? I'll send you that link.
So you can fill out the brackets after the first 4 games have started?
Yes, the first 4 games have nothing to do with anything.
All right, but those teams get in,
yes.
Right? So
have you never filled out a bracket before?
It's been a couple of years.
This is a really weird bit.
I'm really bad at
this is not a good thing.
I'm really bad at
nobody's good at filling out brackets, man. Like, there is nobody on the planet. Patrick Stevens is the most knowledgeable person in terms of college basketball you'll ever know. Do you think Patrick Stevens has any clue what's going to happen? Come on, man. This is a bad bit.
Well, I haven't filled out a bracket since before the first four started.
Well, that is 12 years. I mean, they've been doing these games for a long time, Chief.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. Get yours in right now, and let me know that you're in for the contest. Winner is going to get $500. Second place gets $250, and then we're sending $250 to the folks at Show Your Soft Side and the wonderful work that they do in the community to support the area's pets. So we want to lift them up, spin them off. It's not a significant number, but $250 would be great. We'd love to do that. But in order to do that, we got to fill it up. And we're doing a good job so far, you guys. One day in, I am confident we're going to get it filled up, but we only get it filled up if I berate you and remind you that I need you to step your game up. That's the way that it works. So I need you to do that right now. Get in $20. Again, Cash App, $ Glenn Clark Radio, Venmo, Glenn-Clark, PayPal, Glenn Clark 180. Get your $20 in. I'll send you the link. You'll get signed up. You can win $500 or $250 if you finish in second, and then $250. Even if you don't win, you'll know you have done something good because you will have sent money to the folks at Show Your Soft Side and the wonderful work that they do in the community. That's the reason why we do things the way we do them around here, is to take care of great local charities. So please get in now. Thank you to all of you who have. I know John and Paul and Paul's son got it. A bunch of you, not this Paul, other Paul and Ovielando.
I have no son.
A bunch of you have gotten in. Continue. We need John Proctor. Although, John Proctor, I don't think you paid yet. I don't know what kind of shenanigans are in that you managed to sneak in. I don't know if Brian Powell sent you the link or something. I don't know how that worked, but need you to. It's a charity thing. Let's go. We're not messing around with this. This is for charity. Step up, get paid. And again, if you don't, to be clear, if somehow somebody got in without paying, and I don't know who else could have done that because I don't give the link until I get payment. We'll just kick you out. I mean, that's the reality. If you don't pay by Thursday, you're out. You just don't count the way it goes. So, that's that. That's what we need to do. Thank you for the reminder, Chris. I appreciate that, as we need to fill up our bracket contest. I know, Paul, you did this, and other people are doing it. I am in complete agreement, utter and complete agreement, that the Orioles should put spring training games on TV. You own the network. I'm getting charged for the money in my cable bill. Put them on TV. I'm also the person that doesn't really care because there is no world in which I would watch spring training games on TV, the same way that I no longer will watch preseason football games. You're not going to get me to watch any sort of athletic contest that isn't real. I'm out. Now, if I was there, I would go because I love going, sitting around at the ballpark. It's a great experience. Tremendous experience being at spring training. Watching spring training, horrible. Just an awful, wretched experience. Sitting down and watching something on television that isn't a real legitimate sporting contest, I'm out. I'll never do that again. Ever in my life. I'll only go because I know what a great experience it is to hang out in Arizona, particularly in Arizona. Florida, it's good too, but it might rain. That's always the disappointing part about doing spring training in Florida is you run the risk that it could rain.
We went last year, and it was the two coldest days of the entire season. Gray, like 61 degrees and windy, so it was freezing.
Yeah, that's not fun, but 61 degrees right now sounds really good. I would take 61
but
degrees.
But in Florida, when you didn't pack a jacket,
you're
supposed to be in the 80s.
I hear you. It's a tremendous experience live. TV, it's not for me, but I get it. As you're watching other teams announce that they're putting their spring training games on TV, you say to yourself, this money is coming out of my cable bill, if you still do cable, and I don't even get the chance to watch the games. And I hear you. I mean, I do. I hear you. I understand why that bothers you. That being said, I guess I would say the same thing I said with the Ravens. We can't be surprised, can we? Although I don't even know if the Orioles have made it official what their plans are for broadcasts yet. I think we can assume that it won't be all of the games. I think we can safely make that assumption. All right. Today's show is also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today. back in the NCAA tournament. They're getting ready for a showdown with Delaware. She is the head coach at the University of Maryland. She's Brenda Frese, and she's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Paul. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time, and congratulations on being back in the tournament.
Oh, thank you so much. We're ready to go dancing.
You know, I was thinking about this. It didn't strike me that it's been 3 years since you guys have hosted the NCAA tournament. Of course, we all know what happened in 2020, and last year everybody had to pick up and go down to Texas and do it that way. Does it make it mean a little bit more? I'm sure you'd rather be doing it coming off a Big Ten title. I'm sure you'd rather be a number 1 seed, but does it mean a little bit more knowing it's been a while since you guys have been able to do this at home?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be able to be one of the top 4 seeds and to be hosting so your fans can come and watch your team play. On the flip side, I mean, really, up through our junior class, nobody has played in the NCAA tournament at home. So it's a unique thing for us that we're rebuilding within the team just because of all the circumstances that have happened. But this is what you work so hard for, is to be able to be one of the teams to host.
You speak about circumstances. I know it's kind of been like a trying year for you guys just to have everybody on the floor, and it looked like coming out of the chute this season, you guys might have been like an utter monster, and then just keeping players healthy was kind of an issue. How good do you feel about where you are as a whole going into the NCAA tournament, Coach?
Well, yesterday was the first day we finally had all 9 healthy available players.
By the way, that's
so
a good time to have them.
Yeah, it felt like we had an army. I mean, it was probably, it was by far one of our best practices. The kids are really locked in, and it felt like we had a ton of numbers. So, credit them. I mean, they have been through so much adversity between injury and illness and just a lot this season. But, I'm hoping all of that was for a reason, to be able to trend the right way here in March.
Are you able to go back and point out and say, look at what we did early on in the year when we were more complete against Baylor? And do you feel like that's more of a referendum, say, on what your team is when you have all of your players on the floor as you're now going to have going into the tournament?
Yeah, we definitely point through that we've been, even that Baylor game, we were missing two to three players in that game.
Jeez, so, I didn't remember that.
I just
Man.
think the adversity has made us more resilient. It's made us a lot more tougher. And, this is, the strongest our roster is going to be with the 9 available players that are all healthy. And so, we are excited. We've been through a lot this season and, are more than prepared for what lies ahead.
She is Brenda Frese. Of course, Maryland getting ready to host Delaware in the NCAA tournament. She's with us on Glenn Clark Radio. Coach, this is Maryland basketball, right? Like, this is the time of the year. This is what you guys are built for and to win championships. Is there a chip on these players' shoulders because you guys lost in the first round of the Big Ten tournament? Again, it gets a really good team, right? Like, the Big Ten was so loaded this year, but does it create kind of a chip on the shoulder that this isn't what Maryland basketball is supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be the team that's making deep runs and hoisting trophies and cutting down nets.
Yeah, well, I think, twofold. I mean, it shows you how hard it really is to be able to do. I think the schedule, the conference, obviously, all 5 teams, had a chance to be a number 1 seed leading into the last week of the season.
It's amazing.
I think having perspective of just how much the conference has prepared us. But, yeah, I mean, this team is, they're a bunch of winners. They hate to lose, and to lose in that first round. I've told them the story, when Alyssa Thomas's team was here, they lost in the first round of the ACC tournament and went to a Final Four this year. So, one doesn't relate to another, how far of the conference tournament you go, but it's putting it all together at the right time.
Do you feel like the league, the way the league sort of stepped up and was so much deeper, to your point, this year, do you feel like that maybe has sharpened your team more? Not to say that the league was down all the other years that you won, but I think we all know it was a bit more top-heavy this year. Do you feel like that sharpened you more going into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think sometimes you can get a false hope if you're beating teams easily and, you don't have that competition that goes down to the wire. So, we've been in a lot of close games this season. We've played 3 of the 4 number 1 seeds, throughout our non-conference schedules. So, all of that is going to, pay dividends for us here in this tournament.
Brenda, obviously, as you know, in Baltimore, like we think we should probably. We're hoping the Reeses actually just choose to have more kids at some point. Like we're hoping there's going to be somehow more on the way. How neat has it been for you to see the two of them interact the way that they've been able to interact on campus? And for those that don't know what that family has meant to your program, but obviously specifically when you have someone who is simply as talented as Angel is, how much has that meant to your team to have a leader like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story, and I hope all of our Maryland fans are cherishing it because it's such a small window of time to have two elite players like Angel and Julian come through, and their relationship, their dynamic as a family is so close. They obviously bleed Maryland through and through, but it's one of those that you got to pinch yourself because this is my 20th year at Maryland, and I've had a set of sisters, but never a brother-sister combo. And, it's truly an incredible thing to be a part of and to be able to witness.
I mean, it's so cool, and it's a neat story that I hope that, is comes more commonplace, right, as years go on, right? Like, I hope that it's, I would like to be able to use siblings to get more siblings to Maryland over the years. I think that, that's a
absolutely.
good thing that could occur continuing on. Coach, I'm going to dumb it down, right? If you can finish the sentence, if we're going to make a deep run in the tournament, we need to do blank better. Could you finish that thought for me?
Oh man, as a coach, you think you need to do everything better.
That's fair.
We need to, share the basketball more. Our scoring has gone down a bit, and we've got to be able to rebound.
Oh, it's easy as that. Now you just got to go do it, right?
Yeah, no question.
It's just as easy as that. You just sort of explain it that way. When you bring up sharing the basketball more, right? Specifically, we know what kind of shooters you have on your team. You have a lot of. Is it as simple as, hey, we need to get it out? The shots are there, right? Like we know we can count on so many players that you have that are capable of knocking down shots. Is that as simple as that we need to have more trust in getting the ball out?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Absolutely with the trust factor, but like I said, just the fact that we had a stat the other day that only 3 players all season have been at every practice and every game on our roster.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which when you don't have your full roster there every single day, that's hard to build that chemistry and that trust on the offensive end, the defensive end, whatever you're trying to accomplish. So for us, those pieces, like I said, we hope to have that all week and make a deep run so you're getting more practice time together to be able to complete all of that.
I wanted to bring up, it's been a couple of weeks, but I think it was the Ohio State game, correct, that I was watching, and the boys were doing the interview with you post-game because I want to say, was it their birthday that day? Was that the reason?
It was. Good memory, yes, it was.
So knowing what they've been through, knowing their journey, and now kind of being at the age where it feels like they can maybe, is it fair to say, appreciate it a little bit more? How cool has that been to sort of share this a little bit more with the boys at this point?
I mean, you said that correctly. I mean, on Sunday, it's the first time they were, chomping at the bit to come down to practice with me, early before the selection show. And, it took me a moment to be like, oh my gosh, they finally get it. They finally understand what's taken place. So yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, they truly get it. My son this morning was filling out his bracket.
That's cool.
And they're all in.
Are they coaches? Do you feel that in them? Do you see that like they sort of approach it the same way that you do?
I have one that absolutely has a mind of a coach, and then the other one is a point guard on his basketball team. So they're really cerebral, understanding the game. So that's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. That is a really cool, and it was such a neat story or a neat moment to see them share that with you, Coach, and obviously everything that they've been through. Hey, and then just quickly, a thought on Delaware because that's first, obviously on Friday. Do you have to have the conversation about, there's probably a player or two there that wanted to be at Maryland, right? Like, this is not. Players on the other side of the country. There's probably a couple of players on that team that wanted to be here that maybe eye up this opportunity more than a lot of other teams might, that this means a little bit more to them. Do you have to maybe remind them a bit. And, of course, we also know that there are some really good Delaware teams. And thankfully, Elena Deladon's no longer a part of that program. But do you have to have that reminder for your players getting ready for a first-round game on Friday?
For sure. I mean, Jasmine Dickey, who is their player of the year in the conference, grew up coming to camp here. She's out of Baltimore, Maryland. They have a lot of local players from our area on their roster. So they're going to be fired up. Coach Adair, used to coach at Georgetown, actually lived in our neighborhood. So, there's a lot of common ties. She's phenomenal coach, what she's been able to do to turn that program around in 5 years. So, I know they'll be more than prepared. And let's look, I mean, every team in the NCAA tournament is going to be ready to play and is there for a reason.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. But it's just maybe a little bit more personal. All right, Friday, 5 o'clock, down in College Park as part of a doubleheader. If you can't get there, it'll be on ESPNU on Friday for the opener against Delaware. Coach Brenda Frese, you always make us so proud. Can't wait to see what your team does in the tournament. And glad you got everybody ready. Glad we finally have all the bullets in the holster and ready to go for the NCAA tournament. Thank you for taking a few minutes for us this morning, and best of luck in the postseason, all right?
Thank you so much. Go Terps.
Brenda Frese, head coach at the University of Maryland, of course, an incredibly successful head coach at the University of Maryland, and they have been through a ton this season, just not having players on the floor, so that is good for her that they've got everybody back and ready to go for the postseason. Mount St. Mary's women's team is also in the NCAA tournament. We're going to catch up with their head coach, Antoine White, tomorrow morning to get ready. We did learn yesterday, of course, we knew that Towson was going to go to the NIT, and they're going to travel down to Wake Forest tomorrow night, but a couple of local teams also accepted bids to the Basketball Classic, which is a new event this year, and UMBC will be hosting a game tomorrow night in that event, and Morgan will be playing in that event tomorrow night on the road. I want to say at Youngstown State, if I remember correctly. I'll double-check on that. But a couple of area teams whose seasons will also continue with road games. UMBC is a home game. Let me get this correct. UMBC is hosting Merrimack tomorrow night at 7. Morgan is indeed at Youngstown tomorrow night at 7 in the inaugural Basketball Classic. And as I said before, the opportunity to continue to play and practice, and those things are invaluable and they mean a lot. It's frustrating. Those games are also on ESPN Plus, which kind of goes back to my statement about the NIT and Towson. You're playing in a postseason tournament. It's supposed to be a reward, a more significant event than just, no offense to the Basketball Classic, and yet you don't even get the game on TV. It's just a bummer. A bummer the way that worked out. Anyway, yeah, that's what you need to know on the local basketball front, and still no movement. We'll continue to play the waiting game as far as a Maryland coach is concerned. We're also, of course, playing. I saw your tweet this morning, Paul. Like, you needed the Ravens or Orioles, and Orioles, I believe you said, to do something today. Like, do you genuinely believe that the Orioles are making moves?
They signed Chris Owings to a minor league deal.
Right, I said making moves. That's what I said.
Look, they need.
What happened to Chris Owings? He was supposed to be such a player, man.
He signed a minor league deal with the Orioles. That's what happened.
No, but why is he signing a minor league deal? I've just not paid attention to Chris Owings over the last couple of years since he came up with the Diamondbacks and was supposed to be a rock star. He never really had anything notable that occurred in his
Maybe
career.
They'll turn him into a rock star. I know that they need another starting pitcher,
not.
And they need a shortstop now. And we talked about this yesterday. What for if you're going to be terrible? But I'm just at a point now where it's been so long. Can we just put something competitive on the field? And now we're seeing Adley Rutschman has elbow soreness, so that's enlightening, I guess. Everybody has elbow soreness at the beginning of spring. My elbow's been sore for 2 months. So
my elbow's fine for what it's worth if they need me. I'm sure. I saw people really getting worked up about Adley Rutschman yesterday. Nobody said anything like what Mike Elias's quote seemed very benign to me about Adley Rutschman on opening day. He didn't seem to say anything that committed in one way or the other. Why was everybody so worked up on Twitter about Adley Rutschman yesterday?
Because he's 24 years old.
Well, I understand that.
He was drafted now almost 3 years ago, number 1 overall. Honestly, he was ready to be here last year in July or August.
But so Mike Elias didn't say he wasn't going to be
right,
here.
Right, he didn't, but he left it open that he might not be. And I fully anticipate him being the starting catcher on opening day, assuming that the elbow soreness is nothing more than just soreness.
Right.
But it's the idea that he might not be. And, yeah, you only have to wait 15 days If
I'm
he's
going
not,
to read the quote back. No, it's nothing to do with rules. He's in Major League camp. He's one of the brightest talents in the minor leagues in the sport. He's been through a lot the past couple of years like everybody. I think if you're in Major League camp, you got a shot to break with this. When you're not on the 40-man roster, it's oftentimes different than the guys that are already on the 40-man roster, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do. All that sounds to me is like a way of saying, look, we're not going to announce it today. We're not announcing anything.
Right, and they wouldn't. He has to
I just
go
don't
out
understand
there.
why anybody was worked up.
Well, the beat writers have also been saying Robinson Chirinos presents a roadblock for they actually use the term roadblock, which is disheartening.
That doesn't make any. Which beat writer said that?
It was Nathan Ruiz, I believe.
A roadblock?
In his article, he said it presents a roadblock. He said it's not likely, but he presents a roadblock, and it's like
no, a roadblock is a real thing.
Yeah.
Like if you say a potential roadblock, that's a different. I guess that's a different conversation, but that wouldn't be a way you would describe Robinson Chirinos. Robinson Chirinos is no roadblock.
5 years ago, he may have been.
Yeah,
but not
correct.
now.
But he's a guy at this point. That's all
He's
he
a backup,
is.
yeah.
He's just a guy.
I anticipate Rutschman's your starting catcher on opening day. I don't see why he wouldn't be.
Well, I've said 2 times. For me, again, I'll go back to I would not start him on opening day for business reasons.
Right.
I would, if you're going to put him on the roster, but try to use a game as Adley Rutschman's coming out party. Like,
Right.
yeah, try to get a crowd for another game where you're not going to have a crowd. Like the Orioles are trying to do the thing where you can't get in for opening day for less than $50. You can get a ticket, but you can't get a ticket for less than $50. The next night, you can get in for $10. They can suddenly sell a ton of tickets if the next night is Adley Rutschman's debut. I've maintained. I know we all want this one thing, but for business reasons, I actually think it would make far more sense for the Orioles to try to have an Adley Rutschman opening day.
No, man, I already have my tickets for opening day. If I go to opening day, Rutschman's on the roster, and he's not starting, I'm going to be pretty
Well, I would
upset.
announce it ahead of time. I would announce it this week.
Still gonna
I would
be pretty
say,
upset.
why? Why would it bother you?
Because I have tickets for opening day. I got to work
but
the
you
next
did
day.
you buy opening day tickets because of Adley Rutschman, or did you buy opening day tickets because of opening day?
Because of opening day.
Exactly.
But I still want to see Adley Rutschman's debut.
But this is about you, Paul. This
It is about me, damn it.
This isn't everybody else's problem. This is your problem specifically.
My problem is
Not everybody else has to work the next day.
I will stand on a mountaintop.
Well, it's not. I'm sorry. I've got bad news for you.
Nobody's listening.
Yeah, correct. You can go climb as many mountains as you want. It's not going to impact anything. For business reasons, if I was the Orioles, I wouldn't do it. But if you want to say, for the sake of good faith and trust that they're always going to put the best players on the field, sure, then Adley Rutschman, I guess, should be the catcher on opening day. Because Robinson Chirinos sure as F ain't the best player. Nobody's going to argue with that.
Can
To
you
me,
just imagine Adley Rutschman makes opening day roster, then the lineup comes out, Robinson Chirinos catching.
I would announce it ahead of time. I wouldn't wait until opening day to make that clear, because then you're not going to get the bang for your buck for the Adley Rutschman opening day that we're talking about. And I would even find some weird way of saying it, something along the lines of like, for load management purposes, we're not going to play Adley Rutschman on opening day. We're going to play him the next day. Like, I would find some sort of unique way of saying it. But we all know what you're really doing, which is you're creating an Adley Rutschman opening day. And that's exactly what I would do if I were the Baltimore Orioles in order to try to get a crowd for a business reason. Again, if they were trying to win baseball games, if I believed, then I wouldn't be playing around with any of this. But this is all in the context of I don't think they're going to win baseball games. They should try to win business games. I don't think they're going to win baseball games. But I get it. You want the best players on the field. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Football. You can play Underdog right now. Download the Underdog app. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. They got great basketball, hockey contests, and baseball contests just around the corner. Use the code PRESSBOX. Deposit up to $100. We'll match it with free money for you to play with Underdog Fantasy Football. It's a lot of fun. For those of you that still are waiting to be able to bet on your phone or on your computer here in the state of Maryland, you can feel like you're betting with Underdog Fantasy Football because you can play player props and parlays and things along those lines. Again, UnderdogFantasy.com. Patrick Stevens joins us next. We'll talk about the brackets. We'll talk about the local scenario. We'll talk some lacrosse as well on Glenn Clark Radio.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Answering Baltimore's calls for help, running in when others run away, working together toward one shared vision for a thriving city. That's your Baltimore Police. But the department needs more good people. People like you. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
Sports betting has come to Maryland, and we're ready to help you win some money. Tune in for Simply the Bets with Glenn Clark and Paul Valley every Tuesday morning at 11:40. FanDuel Sportsbook GM Bruce Billick and VSiN's Aaron Oster join the guys every week to give you all of the info you need and even a few winners. So come win some money with us on Simply the Bets every Tuesday at 11:40 a.m. Brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Watch at YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline.
Glory Days Grill's St. Patrick's menu is now in full swing, and it's their most popular seasonal menu all year. New in 2022 are their smoky thigh wings with Guinness grilling sauce, a house-made Guinness barbecue sauce. Fan favorites also include their corned beef and cabbage, the shepherd's pie with Guinness braised ground beef, the Glory Days Reuben, and the Rachel. Enjoy a pint of Guinness or Guinness Baltimore Blonde. The St. Patrick's menu is available for the whole month of March. Come in for great food, cold beer, and basketball. Find out more about Glory Days Grill and get your order in online at glorydaysgrill.com.
Baseball is back. I'm Paul Valley.
And I'm Zach Goodman.
You can find us live every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon talking all things Orioles and Major League Baseball.
Like the debuts of Adley Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez.
And how the rotation and bullpen are rounding into form. Watch us live at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and facebook.com/PressBoxSports.
Or you can listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio.
That's the Bat Around, live with the latest in baseball coverage every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
We can't imagine why you'd want to, but you can watch GCR live. It's at facebook.com/PressBoxSports and try to guess whether these guys are wearing any pants.
All right, back in here on GCR. If you haven't picked up the print issue of PressBox yet, of course, there's Gary Williams on the cover. We celebrate 20 years, the 20th anniversary of Maryland's men's basketball national championship back in 2002. Great conversation with Gary and so many of the players that were a part of that incredible run. Again, you can go pick that up right now for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms. It's Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we talk college sports with our guy, Mr. Patrick Stevens, at Discourse, D1S Course on Twitter, Washington Post, USA Lacrosse Magazine. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, Glenn. How is this fine morning?
Everything is lovely around here. I mean, nice. It'd be nice if there was a local connection to the NCAA tournament, but as you've shared a couple times, almost historic in how much there is no local connection to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, when you look at the Baltimore, Washington area, and that's basically 4 teams in D.C. plus Maryland, George Mason, Navy, all the Baltimore schools. Throw in Mount St. Mary's while you're at it. The last time there was 0 teams among that group in the NCAA tournament was 1978.
Wow.
The D.C. drought is actually only a few years. It only goes back to 2018. That was their first time since 1978. But that was the year UMBC got in and beat Virginia. So in terms of local hoops, what we're left with is Morgan State and UMBC playing in the basketball classic, which is the reconstituted college insider tournament. So UMBC's at home tomorrow night against Merrimack. Morgan State goes to Youngstown State. And, of course, Towson, the CAA regular season champions in the NIT, they go down to Wake Forest. I believe that's tomorrow to play a 7 o'clock game in Winston-Salem against the Demon Deacons.
And I don't mean to be dismissive of any of that at all, because I get for programs like that, it's significant to still be playing basketball and – you win a game or two. Towson somehow goes down and beats Wake Forest. I don't care what the scenario is. That's massive. I mean, that's incredible for their program if they were to be able to pull something off like that. It's just from where they were to where they are, it's kind of hard not to feel an amount of disappointment about that.
Yeah, I think that if you're Towson, the thing that you're really trying to guard against there, you obviously want to play well, but you also don't want any kind of letdown. You don't want to feel just so bummed out that you lost that CAA semifinal to Delaware that you go out and lay an egg. You want to feel like it is almost like a second season of sorts for them if you're the Tigers. And so, sometimes you can run into a power conference team that's like so disappointed that, I really don't want to be playing this NIT game. It's spring break maybe. I don't know if it is or not, but it could be down in Winston-Salem.
Right.
And the place is half full. You kind of have to bring your own energy. It's pandemic basketball again in some ways, unless there's a bigger crowd waiting for the Deeks than I would anticipate. But I think that's certainly an opportunity. And you know what? If they win that game, they're going to be playing fairly close to home in the next round because VCU and Princeton are the other team in that bracket. So there's a chance that if they do win, that they'll be playing somewhat nearby over the weekend or early next week in a second round game.
All right, let's talk about the brackets. Give me, I'm hard pressed to think that anybody truly got hosed. I know that Texas A&M would argue about that, but my God, there's 68 teams that get into this tournament. It's kind of on you at some point if you didn't get in. But there did seem like there were a couple of issues that you noticed in the way that seeding kind of played out this year.
Yeah, I mean, and first off, to build off your earlier point there, like it's good that in basketball that we're arguing about number 37
right
being hosed, or number 48 really if we include all the automatic qualifiers that are above the cut line, as opposed to arguing about number 5. Mm-hmm. So so basketball has that over football for sure. So. But it sure seems like that at about the time that Indiana wrapped up its victory over Illinois was when the committee stopped paying attention to any sort of results that occurred over the last nearly 3 full days of the regular season. I mean, essentially it seemed like the door closed at about 2:00 on Friday afternoon, and everything else was like, well, if you get an automatic bid, great, but that's going to be it. And so you see teams like Tennessee that weren't able to move up despite winning the SEC. Duke that wasn't punished for losing to a borderline tournament team in Virginia Tech in the ACC final. You see these things throughout. Colorado State lost in the Mountain West semis, and they were 5 spots and 2 lines ahead of Boise State, which won the tournament, won the regular season. And granted, Colorado State had a regular season sweep, but those 2 teams should not have been that far away. And so, I feel like the difference between a 2 and a 3 seed and the deal that you have to face isn't that substantial. It's when you start tinkering there with the 6 seeds and the 7 seeds, and you suddenly turn a 5 into a 7 or a 6 into an 8, that's when you start getting into real problems. That's when you throw a joker into the deck because you're suddenly making a 2 seed or a 1 seed playing a much more difficult game than you would normally anticipate. And so that's one of those that you'll look at, like the Connecticut team of 2014 that I thought was clearly underseeded. And wound up being a 7 seed,
right.
beats Villanova in the second round, wins the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Think about Wichita State from a few years back that went into the tournament at 30-4 and got dealt a 10 seed and had to play Kentucky in the second round. That wasn't a treat for that Kentucky team either to have to deal with that. And they didn't make the Final Four that year. They lost to Carolina, but that's another example of, this is not a whole lot of fun if you're messing around with the seeding. It's more than just simply one team having to deal with something. It's multiple teams that have to deal with it eventually.
All right, Patrick Stevens with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. I'm going to put the question out on my pad for a second because I'm springing it on you, but I'm guessing it won't take you very long to come up with the answer. I want to know if you were to look at just the games themselves and say, this is the city that I want to travel to this weekend because the games are the most compelling, the potential matchups are the most compelling. I'm going to spend 3 to 4 days in any one of these locations watching these games live this weekend. This is the place where I would want to be because of these games or these teams. What would be the one city that would stand out most to you as far as the games that are going to be played?
Well, that's a good question. I would say there's 2 that stand out to me. One is the potential of getting a Villanova-Loyola Chicago game in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
To go with Houston and UAB, to go with one of those 2 teams against potentially Illinois, even that Illinois-Chattanooga game. Silvio De Sousa, former Kansas Jayhawk,
Yep.
playing for the Mocs now.
Yep.
I mean, that's not a chippy for the Illini at all. And I don't think Houston is going to have the easiest of times against UAB either. So Pittsburgh stands out on that front. The other one I would say, I feel like Buffalo is going to have fun games. Like Iowa-Richmond is going to be fun. If South Dakota State could shoot Providence out of the tournament by 20 in that first round game. South Dakota State shoots almost 45% from three. So can you imagine South Dakota State and Iowa going back and forth?
Yeah.
I mean, that has 108 to 107 written all over it. And then the other games aren't terrible. I mean, UConn, New Mexico State isn't bad. Arkansas, Vermont has significant entertainment value.
No doubt.
I don't know if that was the best possible matchup for Vermont, but that's a team that just won 3 games in its conference tournament by 30-plus points. So, needless to say, they're playing well. So the 2 East Coast sites there are the ones that probably stand out to me the most. I mean, it certainly helps when you're looking at it that you're talking about 2 4s and 5s there, as opposed to you're starting out with a 1 seed,
sure.
and you probably have 1 dud right out of the chute.
Patrick, give me, you brought up Colorado State earlier, and David Roddy certainly would be high on this list, but give me maybe the player that the rest of the country doesn't necessarily, fully know, unless you're an ardent college basketball fan. You might not be familiar with this guy, but there's a real chance that by next Monday morning, you're going to be very familiar with this person's name.
That is another really good question, and unfortunately, I'm going to give you a name that is going to play in one of these play-in games that will be fun.
Okay.
As I think about this, and that's the nation's leading scorer, Peter Kiss of Bryant.
Okay.
Who is well traveled. Believe he began his career at Rutgers. Has got a degree of feistiness to him, and so that's somebody I think that you would be wise to keep an eye on for sure. Here in the first few rounds of the tournament, just kind of thinking about this overall, like I do think that's a really good question overall. I don't know if there's one that really, really stands out on that
the
front.
problem with this question, for those that don't know, is Patrick knows literally every player on every roster. So I'm asking him to dumb it down at this point.
Let's go with the guys on Davidson.
Okay.
Youngjoon Lee and Luka Brakovic.
Yep.
Those are guys that, it's Davidson, so they can shoot. Brakovic's the A10 Player of the Year. I think he's somebody that you should know about. And here's another one in an 8-9 game. Matt Bradley, the California transfer for San Diego State, is somebody to keep an eye on. He's had a great year. He averages, I think, 17 a game for the Aztecs, which is more than double anybody else on that roster. They play Creighton in a first-round game. Winner almost certainly gets Kansas in Fort Worth.
I feel like, you bring up Davidson. A lot of people are just sort of saying, hey, this is Tom Izzo in March, so you're penciling in that Duke-Michigan State showdown. But, boy, I absolutely love Davidson, and even to the point where if they get through Michigan State, I think they could give Duke fits in the second round.
I absolutely agree with you. That is a really nasty piece of work that Duke has to deal with as a 2 seed. You almost wonder if they'd be better off as a 3, right? I mean,
yeah, right. Maybe where they should have been. Yeah.
If they were a 3 seed, you're right. Like they'd probably still be in Greenville, but I think the path, like if they could be a 3 and get the same 6'11" like that Wisconsin has, like LSU is I think something like 7-12 or 7-10 since the middle of January. Iowa State's 8-12 since Christmas. Like that's a 6-11 game that if you're filling out your bracket, you almost want to put no one advancing.
Right. And now LSU doesn't have a coach.
And now LSU doesn't have a coach. But
right.
As I pointed out, Kevin Nickelberry, the former Hampton and Howard coach, is the man that is tasked with being LSU's second interim coach in the NCAA tournament in the last 4 years. Remember, Tony Benford was filling in for a suspended Will Wade back in 2019 when they beat Maryland down in Jacksonville. But in between those stints, between Hampton and Howard, Nickelberry was the head coach of the Libyan national team.
How about that?
So this is kind of a piece of cake in terms of, a situation that's maybe not, in terms of nerves and whatnot. I mean, being the head coach of the Libyan national team 12 years ago, is something that undoubtedly can produce a lot of stories.
It's a bit tougher maybe than being an interim coach at LSU. I don't know if I disagree with that. All right, Patrick, one more on the basketball front. Do you have a gut? I keep getting asked, hey, when's Maryland going to hire their coach? And all I can say is, like, well, it probably depends on who they're going to hire because there are basketball games to be played, right? Like, if they want to hire somebody who's about to make a Final Four run, they're not going to be able to do it. But I get the sense that schools would like to have a coach in place by the Final Four because of the convention that goes on at the same time. It's just something that was pointed out to me by a couple of people. Do you think that ideally in their mind they'd like to have a coach in place by the time we get to the Final Four?
Yeah, I think that's probably a decent target. Having said that, if the coach that they're seeking, or if they're trying to hire an assistant off of a staff, and that team's playing in the Final Four, I mean, that kind of sells itself, right?
Yep.
So I don't think that's a hard and fast thing, but certainly, there's an incentive to get this thing going, right? Like, you're going to have to dive into the portal and get guys. I think that's just sort of a reality that you're facing. At the very least, if you're Maryland, you figure you're going to be down Fats Russell, you're going to be down Eric Ayala. You need to find some scoring immediately for next year, even if it's a stopgap while you go and recruit for the following season. So I think there's some incentive on that front. I always tell people, if you say, oh, well, all these people are getting hired and it's like a race. It's not like a race. Like, you're making a hire for the next 5 years, not for the next 5 minutes or for the next 5 days or the next 5 weeks. You want to make the right hire that pays off over the long haul. So I'm not saying slow and steady wins that race, but you don't want to be rushing into things. Now, Maryland obviously has a fair bit of runway here, 3+ months worth of it. So you would think that they would have a pretty decent idea as to what they're looking for. They obviously have a search firm that they're working with. The search firm has its candidates that it has lined up, that it probably favors above some others. So there's probably a fairly short list already. I'm just kind of curious to see ultimately, what direction they go in, because it still seems like it's sort of a mystery job, right?
Yep.
You look at how Georgia struck very, very quickly, and frankly, they basically hired a guy that had sort of the Mark Turgeon profile. Wasn't particularly popular with his fans. Was usually good to win a game or two in the tournament. But wasn't overwhelming. And so he gets Mike White from Florida, and Georgia had that job open for less than a week. So, if you're Maryland, you probably have guys that you're expecting to target there and talk to. I don't know who that is. My guess is there's probably a little bit of that flavor of the week element to it. Like, are they going to just pick off the head coach of a 7-seed or below that wins 2 games in the next few days? Could be.
That's an interesting thought process. By the way, the assistant thing is, it's hard to not look at what Tommy Lloyd is doing at Arizona and say to yourself, hey, maybe that's the route you should be going in finding a coach. Like, it's worked out okay for them out there. What's George Holcavige's story at Villanova, right? Like, who's that guy that's been at a program that is a proven winner that maybe could replicate that somehow? I just, watching Tommy Lloyd this weekend really made me think about that a little bit more, Patrick, because my God, what a job he has done clearly at Arizona. All right, on the lacrosse front, bigger victory or more significant story to you from Sunday, Hopkins beating Syracuse or Loyola somehow beating Duke?
I think Loyola beating Duke. I mean, there's obviously the subplot of Petro comes back to Homewood and Hopkins gets a victory, but it's not a particularly great Syracuse team right now. They're 2-4. They've beaten Holy Cross and Hobart. I mean, they've got to go, I think it's 5-3 the rest of the way simply to have a chance to make the NCAA tournament. And that's a 5-3 that includes 5 ACC games plus a game against Cornell. It's an uphill climb. But if you're Loyola, that is a victory that can really help turn your season around. You were 1-4. You hadn't even played all that great in the one victory against Lafayette.
Right.
And now you pick off Duke. And now you're back into conference play for most of the rest of the way. They still have Georgetown to go, but it's basically Patriot League play the rest of the way. It's time for them to basically figure things out and maybe catch some fire here in the next few weeks. So
and Kevin Lindley suddenly being a Dodger is
that's news,
yeah,
isn't it?
Significant.
That's a welcome development for Charlie Toomey and company.
Question.
So I think if you're Loyola, that gives you the sort of hope that I think that Charlie had been kind of looking at after that Rutgers game, where they didn't play poorly. They were right in it with a top 10 team, one or two goal game. And so that sort of gives you that evidence that, hey, you can figure it out. And that goes along with how they salvaged last season in the final month of the year. They dug themselves a bigger hole this time around. And you have to deal with the reality that all these Ivy League teams are floating around this year, too, that you have to contend with for NCAA tournament berth. But if you're Loyola, you get that game. Maybe you pick off Duke. Maybe you do have some wiggle room in the Patriot League tournament.
Perhaps,
if you catch some fire here in the next month.
Yeah, got to be Georgetown probably in order to make that happen. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. All right, and then quickly, obviously a big one this Saturday down in D.C. with Maryland, Virginia. Kind of feels like a massive early season showdown and maybe preview of what's to come in the NCAA tournament.
And a review of what was.
Right.
I mean, the last time they played, 17-16 on Memorial Day, pretty fun up in East Hartford. And neither team has lost since. They're both 6-0, both rolling along. I mean, I think the general sentiment, kind of talking to coaches in the preseason, was, well, you've got Maryland, Virginia, and Duke in some order, and then everybody else. And Duke hasn't necessarily held up their end of the bargain, but the other two teams have. Maryland has a victory over Princeton, which has played well. Virginia has obviously picked off Hopkins and Syracuse and a few others so far. So should be a really fun game, and I don't think anybody would be surprised if those are two teams that see each other back up in East Hartford again in May.
All right, let's play our game. Can Patrick Stevens name the MLB teams that this particular player has played for? I've got respite for you because there is a 5-team guy. He's active, and that's the reason why I hadn't included him, but this one should be a cakewalk for you. A very accomplished player. Of course, a former Cy Young winner, a 5-time All-Star, and still active to this day. 5 teams for David Price.
David Price has been a Tampa Bay Ray.
Most certainly.
He has been a Detroit Tiger.
He most certainly has.
He was in Toronto.
He was. Very brief stint with the Blue Jays.
He was in Boston.
Yep.
And he is a Los Angeles Dodger.
There you go. So that one will be the easiest 5-team guy you'll ever do again. That will be the case. So with that in mind, maybe let's do something a little bit tougher. How about the 4 teams for a one-time All-Star, a man who remains in this area to this day? How about the 4 teams for Mike Bordick?
Mike Bordick. Okay. Well, I think 3 of them are pretty easy.
Yes.
Right? Oakland, Baltimore, and the Mets.
Exactly.
Right?
And then
And
where
then
did he finish?
There's a 4th team that's sort of hanging on there
In
at the end.
2003, after he came back to Baltimore, he ended up spending 1 season elsewhere. Actually, a really good season that I did not realize how well it was. In 2003, he finished up his career.
Where would Mike Bordick have gone for the tail end of his career? Did he go to Toronto?
He did indeed. He did go Toronto. Very nice. Very nicely done, sir. I actually, for what it's worth, I did not remember that either myself. Paul Valley certainly did, but I did not.
I didn't entirely remember it, but I vaguely thought that whatever that other stop was an American League East stop. So.
All right. What is the where are you? What's in your world this week? Where are you going to be?
Well, aside from my living room,
yeah.
I'm going to go catch that UMBC game on tomorrow night.
Okay.
That basketball classic game against Merrimack. That was an event that they hoped to get 32 teams for. They got 21. So it's a bracket that they basically sort of build on the fly depending on who advances and what have you. So it's anyone's guess when UMBC's next game would be after that one. It could be next week, could be even later.
I am to understand it would be this weekend. That's all I can share. I am to understand, because it affects my life in a certain way, that it would be at some point this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously you mentioned the doubleheader down at Audi Field, Virginia. Tripleheader, really, because I think it's Catholic and Hampton-Sydney, I think it is, that's playing in a D3 game. But you have Maryland and Virginia, and then Duke and Towson back-to-back down there. So that's the Saturday plan.
I hear there have been a lot of tickets sold to that event, too. I hear there's quite an audience that is expected for that double or triple header on Saturday. At Discourse, D1S Course is how you follow him on Twitter, The Washington Post, and, of course, USA Lacrosse Magazine. Patrick Stevens, always appreciate it, my friend. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again next Tuesday, all right?
Awesome, Glenn. Take care.
Patrick Stevens joins us as he does every Tuesday talking college sports. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org. I spent some time last night with On and Coppin, the documentary that Jerry Bembry made about the 25th anniversary. We tried reaching out to a couple of Coppin guys. Hopefully maybe we'll get one this week. This week is the 25th anniversary of their stunning upset of South Carolina in the 1997 NCAA Tournament. Antoine Brockington being the guy that led the way. And the doc, which was narrated by Snoop, Felicia Pearson, really sort of talks about how Fang Mitchell built the entire program. It culminates with the game. It's not really just about the game. It's about how he was able to build this program at a commuter school in West Baltimore, in not the best part of town, where there were literally no dorms when they went D1. They did not have dorms at Coppin when they went D1, and how Fang was able to get it from there to a place where they kind of became a juggernaut in the MEAC, and then ultimately pulled off that just stunning upset of Carolina. And there have been, obviously, UMBC, of course, becoming the first 16 to win, and there have been a few more 15s, but that was only the second 15 seed to ever beat a 2 seed at that point in the NCAA tournament back in 97.
It's crazy because you know that my college basketball proficiency is waning
yes.
At best. But I remember where I was when Coppin State won that game. I was at my grandmother's house on the couch with my cousin watching it.
I had no connection to Coppin. I had a lot of connections to Morgan growing up because my grandmother taught there. I had no connection to Coppin whatsoever. I didn't know anybody who went to Coppin. I had no, as a kid, like I've got some now, obviously, as an adult. I got quite a few as an adult. But as a kid, I had zero connection to Coppin whatsoever. At that point, I guess I would have been 14 years old. I mean, I couldn't even sworn to you that I knew, like, that they were the Eagles at that time in my life, right? But I was losing my effing mind. It was an afternoon game. I mean, I remember it quite well. What I really remember is they should have beat Texas in the next round. Like, they 1,000% had that game. Like, we bring up the fact that UMBC really battled Kansas State in the second round, but, like, they couldn't hit a shot. They just couldn't score during the course of that game. They played great defense, and they kept it close for a long time. Coppin absolutely should have beaten Texas in the second round. It should have been the first 15 seed. It ultimately became Florida Gulf Coast that was the first 15 seed to make a Sweet 16. But they should have been able to do that. It was a hell of a team, and it's very much worth watching. It's on ESPN Plus this month, On and Coppin. It's about 45 minutes, something like that. Really good doc that Jerry Bembry made about that 97 Coppin, and really the build for Fang Mitchell leading up to that upset of South Carolina in 1997.
How long till we get a UMBC doc?
It's funny because Kevin Coward wrote the book, and my gut would be that with next year being the 5th anniversary, it'll be the first time that anybody attempts to revisit it in some sort of way. What that way is, I'm not sure, because I still think it's tough. Like Ryan Odom right now, I don't really know how much he's trying to accomplish things. Like I don't know how much he wants to do that stuff, being out at Utah State, trying to turn them into a power and spend a lot of time reflecting on something else. I just don't know. I don't know what his interest level is in that. So I bet this would be the first time I think that you would see something like that would be 5 years. I think you got to give it some distance.
I can't believe it's
because
already been 5. It's already been 4 years.
It will be, yeah. I think you got to give it some distance in order to there be something fresh or new, or just not a reminder of the thing that happened. So I think it's the first time, but I think it'd be more likely like around 10 years, somewhere around that, to revisit it then. All right. Still to come this morning, Jonas Shaffer is going to join us from the Baltimore Sun. We'll talk about what the Ravens, frankly, have not done so far in free agency. I got a couple other things I want to get to. Thanks to Nick Kelly. He just signed on, got his spot in our bracket contest. If you have not gotten yours, again, Venmo, Glenn-Clark, PayPal, Glenn Clark 180, or Cash App, $ Glenn Clark Radio. Need you to do that in order to get in. It's Glenn Clark Radio, a Tuesday edition of the program. Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
The newest edition of PressBox is available now. On the cover, we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Maryland men's basketball's 2002 NCAA Tournament championship, as Gary Williams reflects on how the program rose from the ashes of NCAA sanctions to the pinnacle of the sport, and why his perspective of the title run has changed now 2 decades later. Plus, Juan Dixon, Lonnie Baxter, and the rest of the team relive the moments that ultimately led them to cutting down the nets in Atlanta. PressBox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Answering Baltimore's calls for help, running in when others run away, working together toward one shared vision for a thriving city. That's your Baltimore Police. But the department needs more good people, people like you. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The biggest pro wrestling stars today and all time all have one thing in common. You've heard them on Jobbing Out.
Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
The great Kurt Angle.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Matt Riddle.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
The champ, Drew McIntyre.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The great Ron Simmons.
Damn.
Keith Lee.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Bill Goldberg.
My pleasure.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mick Foley is with us.
This is the greatest name for a wrestling show I've ever heard.
MJF.
I'm glad you're happy I'm on this show because I'm freaking miserable.
Le
champion.
Chris Jericho.
Le champion.
AJ, Aaron, Brandon, and Glenn are talking pro wrestling every week on Jobbing Out. Find it at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Stay tuned. Your chance to win $1 million is coming up. Probably not from us. You're listening to Glenn Clark Radio.
All right, back in here on GCR. If you missed it last night, Stan the Fan Charles caught up with Doug DeCince. Great conversation with the former MLB PA rep about everything that came out throughout the course of the CBA negotiations and the end of the lockout. You should go check that out right now. It's available at facebook.com/PressBoxSports. You can also find it PressBoxOnline.com/video. But a great conversation with Stan the Fan and Doug DeCince about the fallout from the end of the lockout and the new CBA. Speaking of which, who was I delighted to see the news yesterday that Major League Baseball and the MLBPA are back in conversations about fixing the biggest problem that came from the new CBA, the end of the extra inning rule. Apparently, don't know why, but both sides looked at each other and said, wait, what are we doing here? As I kept asking, who wants this? And as I posed to Bob Nightingale last Friday, which was the real Bob Nightingale, correct?
Correct.
We did talk to the correct Bob Nightingale.
Yes, correct.
As I posed to Bob Nightingale, I said, Bob, who was fighting for this? Who does this benefit? And Bob's answer, which sort of told me what I needed to know, was, well, it was just a rule that was put in place for the pandemic, so the pandemic's over, they're getting rid of the rule. Which said to me, nobody wants this, because it's not good for anyone. No one is benefited by the possibility of marathon baseball games. It doesn't help the players. They make no more money. They end up getting optioned the next day because the team needs more players on the roster to cover for everybody that had to be on the team. It doesn't help the owners. They can't sell any more tickets. They can't sell any more advertising for extra inning games. All that might end up happening is that you pay some hourly workers within the stadium more money while you're not making any more in the process. You can't sell any more beer. You've shut down concessions. There is nothing to be gained. Nothing, zero, from these marathon baseball games. There was a particularly intelligent human being last night. And I don't know all of Devin Fink's story. I know he has written for Fangraphs and he's worked for the CAA, and he is apparently a student at Dartmouth. I've heard wonderful things about Dartmouth. They rejected me, believe it or not. I didn't quite make the cut at Dartmouth. It was my safety school, though. That was the good news for me is I was good at UMBC. Dartmouth was my safety school.
How about Cornell?
Unlike Andy Bernard, I just couldn't quite make it. Couldn't quite make it there. So Devin Fink gets the baseball. The people that want to be angry about this for the sake of being angry about it, because again, we don't like change. We don't just well to change. He sends out the following last night about a paper that he wrote. He sends out that the extra inning games were roughly 15 minutes shorter in 2021 than they were in 2019. But each individual extra inning actually took longer to complete. This and other findings from a paper my friends and I wrote for a class. I started diving into the paper. It ended up being way too much for me. But the points that he's trying to make is sort of like, well, yeah, you think you're shortening the game, but you're not because the innings are actually longer themselves, which makes all the sense in the world because you're starting an inning with a runner in scoring position, and so the pitcher's got to pay attention and can't just go up there and delivering. There's a lot of strategy that's involved. And with a runner on second inning, the inning is more likely to be longer because you might try to move the runner up. There's a billion reasons why the inning itself might be longer. But the point is, all of the people that were sharing this brainlessly and saying, this is proof that it's not even helping, are missing the point. You're purposefully being obtuse because you think you hate this, because you think it's not baseball. The point is, they don't want marathon games anymore. It sucks. You're romantic about the time you watched all 18 innings of a baseball game. In Baltimore, everyone is romantic about the time you stayed up until 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, to watch that game out in Seattle. But if that game was being played by the 2021 Baltimore Orioles, we wouldn't have all been staying awake for it. We were romantic about it because the team was good. And we're romantic about a lot of things that happen when the team is good. Marathon games suck for everyone. 7, 8, 9 innings worth of watching guys stand up there and swing for the fences and miss sucks.
A couple of years ago when Stevie Wilkerson got that save in that long game out in L.A., it's the first time and only time in my entire life I fell asleep before the completion of the game.
There's nothing watchable about it.
I was so
awful.
upset. But if they had a runner on second base, there's no way it would have gotten that.
Of course it wouldn't have gotten there. And again, you're holding up, because people will bring up, well, what about Stevie Wilkerson getting the save? Because sometimes you let position players pitch when you get into marathon games.
It was at 3 a.m.
My God, man. The team wasn't good. There were like 5 people that were invested. And I get it. It was an anomaly. But Stevie Wilkerson's long gone from Baltimore. Well, it's only ever going to be a blip on the radar screen. It will have long been forgotten about years down the road. Somewhere someone's going to be like, remember who Stevie Wilkerson was? Oh, yeah, I kind of vaguely. He also had that great catch, obviously. Yeah. But it's nothing. You're clouding your own judgment because you don't like change. You got 15-minute less per game, but longer innings because the innings were better. You got incredibly captivating theater. Must-watch baseball. The exact opposite of what a game would be if you go into the 10th inning and you know you could be there all night. That is an invitation to leave. After 9 innings to say, I'm gone. Meanwhile, if you know the innings are starting with a runner on second, there's going to be action, you're going to want to stick around and watch that. I'm not suggesting they start playing the first inning with a runner on second base. You've got 9 innings. You have an entire baseball game to determine a winner. Can't do it? Fine, let's get good baseball. The other thing sucked and benefited no one. This is so logical, I can't believe they're doing it. It would be so Major League Baseball to do something completely illogical that helps no one. This is better for everyone. And those of you that continue to just want to be purists for the sake of being purists, that just want to live your life of, this isn't the way things were, so it's not how I want things to be, God help you. I get it. I struggle with change too. I promise you, we all struggle with change. Nobody likes it when mom and dad break up. But we're going to be okay. And in fact, it's already been proven that we're going to be better because this product is better. Better than what we had in the past. So glad that they've gotten their brains together and said, what are we doing here? Maybe we go back to that. Today's show also brought to you by Glory Days Grill. Love Glory Days Grill. The St. Patrick's menu is available right now. The smoky thigh wings with the Guinness grilling sauce are perfection. The Reuben, the Rachel, the shepherd's pie with the Guinness braised beef. It's all delicious. Get your order in right now, glorydaysgrill.com. Still to this moment, the Baltimore Ravens have done nothing in free agency. You cannot possibly be surprised by that. Joining us now to talk about what they might do, he is, of course, our friend from the Baltimore Sun, where he covers the Baltimore Ravens. Jonas Shaffer back with us now here on GCR. What's going on, man? How are you?
Morning, Glenn. How's it going, man?
Everything's all right. You got somebody in mind that you think should be the next Maryland basketball coach?
Don't get me started, man. It's depressing out there. It's depressing. I would rather they, go high risk, high reward, and just not be stuck in the kind of purgatory that they were.
So were you in the
just good enough to kind of string them along? Just take a risk on someone who's a little outside the box.
Were you in the Patino camp? Were you?
I kind of came around to it. Obviously, not a big fan of his moral failings, but I think he would have been a nice guy to set them up for the next coach. He's obviously not going to be a lifer in College Park, considering his age and his his interest in golf and horse racing and all that kind of stuff.
All right, let's talk about the Ravens. Let's talk about what they haven't done. Do we make anything of the fact that here we are, nearly 24 hours into this, and Bradley Bozeman still hasn't signed anywhere? Do we make anything of the idea that maybe this could end up working out in their favor, that he could come back?
Yeah, I think it's possible. But you look at the two teams that were, haven't really made a huge moves, interior offensive line, the Panthers and the Giants. I believe they still have more cap space than the Ravens. Obviously, they are two teams with more needs than the Ravens, as hard as that may be to believe, considering just how many needs the Ravens do have. But, the Panthers are getting rid of Paredes, however you pronounce his name. He wasn't good for them, so they'll need a center. They could be an option, or Linderbaum could be an option, I guess, for them, depending on the kind of, run scheme they want to run. And then the Giants, old friend Matt Skura is there. Billy Price didn't have a great year. Obviously, bounced around the AFC North with the Bengals for a little bit. Former first-round pick, who I kind of mentioned as a possibility as a fallback option for the Ravens if they didn't really like anyone, but he's not a great pick. So I would imagine that those two teams, would have the kind of inside track if they want to take it. But, it's tough to tell without knowing just, the valuations of someone like Bozeman, from inside those guys' front offices.
Well, it also,
but I would say it's promising.
It also seems like that I can't ignore the way that they do their business, that there just might be a part of them that says, we kind of want Bradley Bozeman to sign for big money somewhere else because that's our only real shot at getting like a significant compensatory pick next year. And I don't think you do that in the detriment of your football team. I think if the market comes back around to you, that Bradley Bozeman's sitting there, you sign them. But I just can't help but think about the way they do this math in their heads, that they've probably been thinking about the fact that Bozeman was their shot at a really good comp pick next year.
I think there's the consideration, but when you consider that Yannick Ngakoue, signed for $14 million a year last year, and I don't think Bozeman what did Jensen get, like $12 or $13 million a year? I would be surprised if he beats that. And, the cap goes up every year, the spending goes up. So I think at most the Ravens could get a fourth-round pick in next year's draft. And, again, that's the end of the fourth round. So I don't think that is front and center for their mind in terms of their spending. I think they just have Eric DeCosta is a shrewd negotiator. I think he has a price point in mind for these guys. And maybe Bozeman gives the Ravens a little bit of a hometown discount because, he and his wife love it here. They've really made a home here. But I don't think compensatory selections with Bozeman specifically is going to drive their decision-making.
All right, Jonas Shaffer is with us. He covers the Ravens of the Baltimore Sun. Generically, not necessarily names, but generically, would you almost be surprised if they don't do between now and next week?
That's a good question. I think probably offensive tackle, just because of the sheer number of guys who are becoming available and the guys who were already hitting free agency. I don't know if you can go into next year's into training camp this summer with just Ronnie Stanley and Patrick McCary and Juwan James coming off an Achilles. And, that's about it. I mean, it's pretty bare there. So, you can get a second round pick there. But again, there's a learning curve. I mean, even someone as talented as Orlando Brown didn't start until basically midway through his rookie season. And even then, that was kind of a rocky start for him. Mm-hmm. So, I think we shouldn't overlook the fact that, the theory that was maybe disproven a little bit last year, Lamar Jackson having him healthy back there kind of takes some of the steam out of opposing edge rushers, gears basically, because you don't want to overrush a guy as fast as he does, a guy as fast as Lamar is. So I think that, does give the Ravens a little bit of a cushion in terms of you don't necessarily have to go out and get the best guy. But I do think, considering everything that happened, considering Eric DeCosta basically admitting the failings that he and his front office had this past year with not giving the Ravens enough, backup plan to tackle, it would be pretty surprising if they didn't find someone who they could plug in there, week one and be a passable veteran starter.
As far as the guys that are out there that are former Ravens, right? Zadarius Smith, Michael Pierce now both out there. And look, there's been the thought is they need to do some work on the front seven defensively. I don't know that we can say anything more than I think both at the right price kind of makes sense. I think the real question is, what is the price for guys like that at this point?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about the nose tackle situation. Obviously, seeing Jordan Davis do what he did certainly got my interest. I didn't really think he was a possibility at 14, but then you see what he ran at the combine, and people talk about his possibility for being a pretty disruptive pass rusher. I think that's what I'm focused on if I'm investing significantly in a nose tackle. One thing we don't really know with Mike Macdonald is just what kind of system he will favor in Baltimore. And just to kind of nerd out a little bit, if the Ravens are going to be a too high safety team, which means a lot of cover four, some cover two, then you really have to have some guys up front who can be that kind of Michael Pierce in his prime, Brandon Williams in his prime, run stuffers where you don't need that extra safety in the box to take away the threat of the run. I know, it's more of a passing league than it's ever been, but you still need to have that protection up front. That was what, got the Chargers in trouble so often last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they've made all these, moves this year. So without really seeing what Mike Macdonald wants to do with this defense, it's tough to tell if they want another, big 330-pounder plugging up the zero tech, the one tech. I think, someone like Pierce, if he's healthy at the right price, would make sense. But, you're not going to pay Brandon Williams, the $12 million a year, obviously, that he earned last year. That was, I think, a pretty risky gamble, as it was. And I was, kind of surprised that they brought him back at that point because, even in retrospect, they finished with the NFL's number 4 run defense, I think, in terms of efficiency. look where they got them. Look where that got them in defense overall. You know what I mean? So it's tough. I think Zadarius Smith is interesting, but again, you're talking about a guy who's coming off a pretty bad back injury. They already saw just how debilitating a back injury could be with Derek Wolfe. Obviously, 2 different guys, 2 different injury histories, but both getting up there in age. So they're going to have to do their due diligence and make sure that Zadarius Smith is a guy who can, possibly play 20, 21 games in the season if they see this team as being willing to contend for a Super Bowl.
It's a weird bit with Za'Darius where you're like, it's a back injury. When you say the words back injury, like you immediately back off, and then you're like, well, yeah, but he got back out on the field for the postseason. It's not like it's very difficult to figure out how you measure those two things when you're talking about Za'Darius Smith. Jonas, you and I have not spoken about all of the bluster in the last couple of weeks related to Lamar Jackson, and it has been tough for me to separate what is bluster, what is just everybody's trying to find something, so let me throw this out here and see if it sticks, versus what is significant. And at the end of the day, why really these sides haven't figured it out. Like, why really we don't look and say, hey, here's what the market is, whether you like it or not. Either you're doing it or you're not. And on the flip side, if you're Lamar Jackson, and let's just say the Ravens are not, why you aren't being louder about that and saying, trade me to a team that will, because there's desperation when it comes to quarterbacks. The Steelers are going Mitchell Trubisky. Kirk Cousins got $35 million from the Minnesota Vikings. If you're Lamar Jackson and the Ravens aren't going there, why aren't you screaming? I just keep coming back to the word weird when it comes to all of this because it's hard for me to really define it. But what do you make of all of this bluster and how much it's truly impacting the Baltimore Ravens right now?
Weird is definitely a good way to put it. I think it's tough to say because Lamar, does not have traditional representation. I was just kind of joking with some people earlier that maybe the best reason for bringing Bobby Wagner into Baltimore would be so that you can have someone who's negotiated his own big money deal. You can have a peer for Lamar Jackson, someone who could show him the ropes of how, all right, here's what you got to insist on. Here's how you drive a hard bargain, because it's not like hiring an agent is going to take that much money out of Lamar's pocket. These agent fees are capped, I think, at 3% in the NFL, which let's say he signs a $400 million contract, that agent is going to make out nicely. But if Lamar gets screwed in some way, because, it's a certain guaranteed money that he's not getting, or, he gets more salary than signing bonus, which obviously is not what you want, then does that 3% really matter all that much in the big schemes? I mean, it's a hugely different animal now being a guy going for your second contract than coming in as a rookie, because all of those rookie deals are slotted and there's just only so much wiggle room with the contract details. So it's very, very strange. There's not a lot of transparency there with what's happening on Lamar's side. Obviously, you take Eric DeCosta at his word that they're reaching out to Lamar, that they're entering this into good faith. You read these agent surveys and everyone says that Eric DeCosta is an upstanding GM who is going to return your calls, is going to give you a fair offer and a fair shake for what his team, for what his front office is trying to do. So I don't really know what's going on right now. I think that's the consensus around the Baltimore Ravens reporters in general. It is interesting just to kind of consider the uncertainty affecting. Obviously, we know not having a deal this year probably takes $6, $8, $10 million out of their cap room this year. But then also next year, they're going to have a decent amount of cap room. But if you are thinking about signing a big guy to a big deal, then you are operating with a little bit of uncertainty because you don't really know what Lamar's cap figure is going to come in next year. So this thing just has a snowballing effect that, the Ravens would love to have wrapped up sooner than later.
Well, and there's if you have to use the franchise tag, that's all going to hit you at once. I mean, like that really does hurt you in that scenario. And it's why it just doesn't make sense to me, Jonas. It just doesn't. Like, it seems like everything is there. All of the blueprints are there. Just get it done already.
Right. And on that franchise tag note, I mean, I've seen varying accounts of what the tag could be next year. I think I've seen like over $40 million, which I don't really jive with, considering it wasn't anywhere close to that this year. I think Over the Cap had it at like $31 or $31.5 million for next year. But, if you are, you look at kind of how these contracts are set up, obviously the cap hit tends to escalate over the years because it rolls with the salary cap. So if, the Ravens, let's say, the first year of the Lamar deal is only a $15 million cap hit, then the difference between $15 million and $31 million is a huge deal. If you're thinking about, trying to backload a contract for a guy like a Tyrann Mathieu or a Bobby Wagner. We don't know exactly how the Ravens would structure those deals, but they went from paying Earl Thomas, I think, $2 million salary his first year to wanting to pay him $10 million his next year before, all, kind of hell broke loose on that situation. So it's not insignificant, the kind of ramifications for operating in the dark the way the Ravens are right now with the Lamar situation.
All right, he is Jonas Shaffer from the Baltimore Sun. You need to be following him right now at Jonas_Shaffer. That's Shaffer with 2 Fs on Twitter. As the next few days unfold. Jonas Shaffer, always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning. Let's talk again soon.
Of course, Glenn.
All right, buddy.
Take care, man.
Jonas Shaffer checking in with us here as we continue to wait to see if the Baltimore Ravens will make a move. Hey, coming up in just 5 minutes, Simply the Bets. We do it every Tuesday at 11:40 a.m. It's brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. And then every other Thursday now, you'll be hearing Weekend at Bookies, also brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. So not this week, but next week for Weekend at Bookies, and every week for Simply the Bets, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11:40 a.m. Tidbit brought to you today by the Baltimore Police. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
All right, so yesterday we talked about Tom Brady unretiring to come back to the Buccaneers to make at least one more run at his 8th Super Bowl. So we're going to play off of that a little bit this today.
Alrighty.
The odds of Tampa Bay winning next year's Super Bowl when Brady retired were plus 2,800. After his announcement, they jumped to plus 750, tied with the Bills for the second best odds in the NFL. I'm sorry, not tied with
the Bills had the best odds.
Yeah, they're tied with oh my gosh, I put the wrong team in, but they're tied with one other team.
Oh, that's not. This is not good.
Behind the Bills, who are at plus
Kansas City.
I think it's Kansas City. I believe it's Kansas City.
They had the second odds previously.
Yeah, I believe they're tied with Kansas City at plus 750. Sorry, I put the same team twice.
Right.
If Brady, who already owns more Super Bowl victories than any other franchise, were to win again, it would be the Buccaneers' third title, which would still be more than 19 other franchises. In each of the 4 American sports, what are the top 3 teams based on championships in each sport? And can you name how many for each?
I definitely can't name how many.
And here's a hint. Remember, NFL is including Super Bowls and NFL championships.
For Christ's sakes, there's zero chance I'll be able to get that. Less than zero chance that I can
Come
get
on,
that.
man. I have faith in you.
NFL championships?
You got Otto Graham yesterday.
Yeah, but I honest to God, all that was think of an old football name. And that's
Pull a rabbit, man.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind. So I'm definitely not going to get the all right, anyway, the Lakers.
Yes, they are tied for first with 17.
The Celtics.
With the Celtics at 17.
The question is, who is the third? There's a real chance I'm guessing there's a significant drop off between.
Significant gap.
Yeah.
A double-digit gap.
Yeah. So I'll just say the Bulls then.
The Bulls
at
at 6.
In the NHL, the Canadiens.
Yep, they're first with 24, and then another significant gap.
The Red Wings.
The Red Wings have 11, but they're third.
Ooh, there's somebody between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. The Bruins.
No.
The Maple Leafs.
The Toronto Maple Leafs, 13.
You got to go back a ways for those. All right, baseball, the Yankees.
Yep.
26, right? Or 27? Yeah, 27. I always forget about that last one.
I do too. Intentionally.
I don't know who the Buccaneers are tied with. In the FanDuel Sportsbook, the Buccaneers are now second by themselves. The Packers and the Chiefs now tied for third at plus 850. So
I looked last night, and it was they were tied with another team at plus 750. Maybe signings today.
Perhaps. I don't know why I guess because we now know it's Tyrann Mathieu definitely not going to be back in Kansas City. I don't know. That's weird. Anyway, the other two for baseball, the God, because you got to really think back on. There's been a lot of baseball championships. The Giants.
No.
The Dodgers.
Nope. Keep in mind, they won their first one 2 years ago.
In a while, but they had won. I'm trying to think of the first half century of the 1900s and who won championships then. The Athletics.
The Athletics are third with 9.
It's been a while for the Athletics too.
That's true. That's true.
Man, I'm just saying, man. You got to think. You got to really think back.
Touche.
The Braves.
No.
Just got to think about it.
They've only won 4.
Even going back to Boston?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little surprising to me.
I think you're gonna be mad at yourself if you don't get this.
Mad at myself? Well, I mean, there's only so many teams. I could probably get it at some point.
Yeah, but if you don't get it quickly.
I'll just say the Cardinals.
The Cardinals
make
with
a lot of
11.
Sense. It makes sense.
All right, and we're back to the NFL.
Including NFL championships. So it could be the Browns because they won a ton of those.
It's not the Browns.
It still doesn't surprise me, but it could have been. The Cowboys.
Nope.
They've won a lot of Super Bowls, but not a lot of championships. The Giants.
The Giants are third with 8.
Including championships, the Raiders.
No.
I don't know. We're gonna run out of time here.
They're division rivals.
The division rivals. The football fellers.
No.
The division rivals. Oh, these two teams. They're not division rivals of the Giants.
No, these two.
So
teams.
the Packers and
the
Bears.
The Packers and the Bears.
Okay.
Packers 13, Bears 9.
All right, very good. All right, quick reminder, know the risks and have a plan before you start gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org. Here's what's coming up tonight. Totally tubular-wise, the NCAA Tournament technically does get underway with the first 4. Texas Southern and Texas A&M Corpus Christi at 6:40 on True TV, then Indiana, Wyoming tonight at 9:10. Maryland and Delaware baseball today at 3 on Flow Sports. Islanders Capitals at 7 on NBC Sports Washington. ESPN Plus and Hulu for Panthers Sharks at 10:30. NBA TV for Suns Pelicans at 8. Champions League action on Paramount Plus today. Ajax and Benfica at 4. Man U and Atletico Madrid at 4. And then Tennis Channel for Indian Wells. Great win last night for Jensen Brooksby beating Steph Tsitsipas. And the USA Network for WWE NXT at 8. Some non-sports highlights.
Phoenix Rising Part 1, Don't Fall at 9 o'clock on HBO. If you go on HBO Max, you can find Part 1 and Part 2 streaming. And then nothing noteworthy.
You're missing the big one. Mr. Mayor is back tonight. That's
Mr.
the big
Mayor.
one. That's significant.
I've
That
never
show
even
is
heard of
you get your head out of your ass and figure out what it is that you're missing. Mr. Mayor is
I think I heard of it for the first time over the weekend.
Well, you should probably pay more attention. It's outstanding. Ted Danson plays the mayor of L.A. It's of the ilk of a Parks and Rec and shows
what
like
station
that.
Is that on?
It's on NBC.
I have it listed here.
Well,
Mr. Mayor,
maybe
8:30.
you should do a little bit more. Bobby Moynihan is delightful on that show,
Didn't realize
too.
it was a noteworthy.
It is outstanding.
Young Rock at 8 o'clock.
That is not outstanding. Mr. Mayor is outstanding. Holly Hunter plays this kind of crazy chick that works in the. I mean, it's just an outstanding show. Happy that that's back. All right, thanks today to Patrick Stevens. Thanks to Jonas Shaffer. Thanks to Brenda Frese. We'll get all that up in the greatest hits section of the
Archives.
tab at glennclarkradio.com. On the program tomorrow, Charles Davis from the NFL Network is going to join us. Drew Forrester will check in. Chris Hinton.
We're supposed to. He hasn't got back.
The son of former Baltimore Colt, Christopher Hinton from Michigan, who's a top draft prospect this year, and of course played for Mike McDonald last year. So we're scheduled to chat with him tomorrow as well, and stuff and things. Thanks everybody. Oh, and I think there's a local kid who's playing in the NCAA tournament, but I don't want to give that away either. But I think he's going to join us tomorrow. All right. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Glory Days Grill, Royal Farms, the Baltimore Police, Grade 8's Memorabilia, Live Casino and Hotel, Underdog Fantasy Football, Blue Line K9, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Paul. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Valley III. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday night. Go Maryland baseball. Duke sucks. Ohio State sucks too. If you're with us audio-wise, do nothing. We'll be back shortly. If you're with us on video, give us 1 minute refresh. YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline or Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. And